Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this is the show where we watch every episode of G.I. Joe Real American Hero in sequential order. And this week, we're breaking format just a little bit because we're going to watch an episode of The Transformers that has a major G.I. Joe crossover that absolutely ties the two universes together. And I can't watch a Transformers episode without the man sitting next to me. He's a Transformers expert. He's a writer. He's a producer. You know him from G4. He's a co-host on the Game Face podcast from Sifted.net. You've heard him on the show before. He was with our movie. He was part of the Botched by Joe opening 10 minutes of the movie podcast. But he is a Transformers expert, and he's a friend, and I'm so happy to have him on for this episode of Transformers / G.I. Joe. Mr. Matt Keil. Matt, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's good
for a little-known, I think, element of G.I. Joe history.
This is always an Easter egg / trivia button that people...
like this and Marissa Fairborn.
Yeah, I was looking into the Marissa Fairborn stuff, and I've been aware that, obviously, she was in multiple episodes,
Yeah,
right?
she was a major character early on in Season 3 in Transformers, like daughter of Lady J and Flint.
Yeah.
I actually have an action figure of her. She was a BotCon exclusive a year or two ago, and she comes on her Technobot motorcycle, which is sadly not transformed.
And she comes with a family portrait of mom and dad.
Gray-haired Flint.
Old crotchety Lady J. Yeah, and they've also used her in the IDW comics, which made it awkward when they then decided to make it one big universe. And Flynn and Lady J then met their supposed future daughter, which was a little awkward.
There's a lot of things happening in that crossover thing that didn't work out too well.
We heard that, I think it was Aubrey Sitterson who said on the show, he just said, "Yeah, we're gonna ignore that." Like they're just when they really, the people at IDW just said, "Okay, we're just gonna have to ignore the fact that she's supposed to be there."
There's a point at which you have to stop being beholden to the Easter eggs.
Right, exactly. Well, this episode is it's called Only Human. It's from season 3, so it's post Transformers the movie, and
so it's 2005. In
the show continuity, which now
the far future.
Well, it's funny. At first, my brain was kind of chuckling, going, this is what they, as we watch this episode, this is what they think the future is going to look like and everything. But then my brain went, oh no, wait a minute. If in the early 1980s we got robotic technology from outer space, showed up, society would absolutely be transformed.
Like this isn't basically humanity is an uplifted civilization. Due to its alliance with the Cybertronians at this point.
Completely.
Also consider that humans by themselves are inventing weather dominator technology, without the Transformers involved.
Yeah, we're already dealing with an enhanced
timeline is what we're after. And if you consider Mask part of that same universe, there's a lot going on here that we didn't get to play with in reality.
Mask really is just the Reese's peanut butter cup of Transformers in G.I.
Pretty much. I was always shocked that because like the cinematic universe thing wasn't a thing yet, but I was like, okay, when the Bay movies, as bad as they are, started up, I'm like, okay, well, Josh Duhamel and those guys got to become G.I. Joe, right? Or at the very least, you have like and then you have like the bad guys, bad human guys, in 4, they were like deconstructing Transformers tech, and I'm like, see, the way to do this is not to make it like this stupid like morphine thing, transformium thing. What it is, you have them reverse engineer destroyed Transformers, and they build the Mask vehicles. And that's where Venom comes from. A terrorist organization starts using reverse engineered Transformers tech, and Josh Duhamel and those guys have to like catch up and team up with the Autobots to stop them, and that's where you get Mask from.
That would be great.
And it's like, what? Come on, people! And the funny thing is, if you see don't see the most recent Transformers movie, but if you
don't see it.
But if you do, like the early stuff with like King Arthur and all that stuff is clearly setting up a possible Visionaries movie, which is astounding.
You think that was a Visionaries?
Visionary, because Visionaries is mentioned as one of their Hasbro's shared universe things they might want to do.
Didn't they just start a Visionaries Transformers?
Yeah,
comic?
Transformers versus Visionaries issue number 1 actually sold out. They're going into a second printing, believe that or not. If I had to bet on like what the Hasbro properties from the 80s that were going to come back would be, Visionaries would not have been on the list.
And that was the figure that you would look through their chest, right?
They had like holograms.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them had staffs with another hologram on them. It's like in the cartoon, like the hologram on their chest would like come to life, and like one guy had like an eagle, and the eagle would come out and dive at the enemies or whatever, and it was just that kind of thing. There was a weird like hologram action figure competition at one point where like they made Hasbro or Kenner or somebody, whoever was doing that, made those. Hasbro made those, and then Galoob, I think it was either Galoob or Worlds of Wonder, made something called the Supernaturals, which were like, they were like normal looking figures, and then you popped off their torso and they had like a hologram monster version of themselves underneath.
Yeah.
So like one guy had like a werewolf underneath, and one guy there was like a mummy, and you popped it off and it had like a monster jackal looking thing. And I remember there was like a kind of a racist one where like it was like an Indian chief, and you popped it off and he was like an eagle underneath or something. But I remember those guys because it was so weird because they were that, and they had I thought those guys were cooler because the hologram was bigger, of course. They had those, and they were like right next to this other line whose name I can't remember, but they also transformed into monsters. But the way they did it was they were like rubbery, like the top of the character was rubbery, and you had like a little vacuum pump, and you sucked the air out of them, and they shrank over like a
yes.
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like the failed 80s toys were wild, man. Like the stuff that didn't catch on was like there was some ideas in there. But we digress.
We digress for a very good reason, because we love all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that show on it's on Netflix, The Toys That Made Us.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that yet, watch it.
Definitely.
As of this recording, it's been G.I. Joe, Transformers, Barbie, and He-Man.
No, Transformers is not yet.
G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Barbie, and He-Man. And Transformers is coming up, right?
Yes, and you will see some of my actual Transformers toys in that show.
You were featured on it.
I wasn't, but they needed some early G1 stuff, and I had it. I met them at a Comic-Con at a panel, and I went and my Omega Supreme is in it, and Whirl and Blaster. So they're just used like they shoot them like B-roll, like a rotating turntable.
Yeah.
So several of my actual Transformers are in that show.
Well,
those are some cool guys making that show.
I want to get them on here. I think I reached out to them last fall, like on Twitter, and they were obviously in the middle of getting their show prepped.
Right.
So, but I want to get them on the show to talk.
I'll try to help with that.
Yeah, let's make that happen.
They were really cool, and the guy, the showrunner, biggest Omega Supreme fan I've ever met. Like he was so excited to see an Omega Supreme in the building. It was great.
What about Transformers spoke to you versus any of the other Toylands?
Well, I was a big Star Wars fan when I was younger. I'm actually old enough to have seen them in the theaters, and I hated Return of the Jedi. And my dad tells a story of I was 7 years old or so, and I'd waited literally half my life for this movie. And on the way, we saw it opening day. On the way home, he said all you did was bitch in the back seat the whole way home, because I hated Leia being his sister didn't make sense to me. I didn't like that there was another Death Star. I didn't understand the concept of redemption, so I didn't understand why nobody wanted to kill Darth Vader anymore. Like, I did not like Return of the Jedi. I like it much better than
how Boba Fett went out.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, I was never a big Boba Fett fan, but like I was like, okay, nothing happened there. Like, what was that? And even when I was 7 years old, I knew all that was nonsense. So I like it better now as I grew up and understood more of what was happening in the Vader Luke Emperor plotline. Like I get it better now.
Yeah.
But so basically, I went home and like kind of didn't like my toys anymore, and so. There was sort of a search to find a new thing, and I still like Matchbox cars, and my dad found a GoBot a little while, the following year, and brought that home. It was Tank, which is the blue one that just bends over and is a tank now. Like that's all it is. And like that was like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So like I was a GoBot fanatic, and then Transformers came out, and GoBots was dead to me.
Are GoBots currently owned by Transformers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Hasbro owns that now.
So Hasbro owns that. Are they going to incorporate? Are they doing anything?
Not
with them?
officially.
They were like, I mean, they were the knockoff for the kids who couldn't afford Transformers.
Well, no, they were first.
They were first?
They got to market months before the Transformers.
Did they really?
Yeah, that's why I collected them first, because they came out in like February, March '84, and Transformers started around September.
Which came first in Japan?
I think some of the lines that became Transformers were first in Japan.
Okay.
So they were 70s era.
Yeah.
So because like the Diaclone and Microman stuff was years old when Hasbro got their hands on it and repurposed it into Transformers, which was all the lore for that was written by Marvel. Bob Budiansky and all those guys.
Okay.
Actually,
much like G.I. Joe.
Much like, yeah, I mean,
Marvel wrote the
what
lore,
they did with G.I. Joe is why they went to them with the Transformers, because G.I. Joe had gone so well. They're like, well, maybe you can do that with this robot thing.
That's so funny, because then Transformers, I mean, with all is a G.I. Joe podcast. All of the G.I. Joe, Transformers has eclipsed the popularity of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, which is, it's interesting to kind of how that works, where like just the idea of a robot that becomes something else is probably just a more universal sell than a American-driven jingoistic anti-terrorist organization, because like you get into weird political things internationally with that. Even though like I think you could definitely make the case that the character work on G.I. Joe was stronger for the most part, because they focused on the same characters longer. Like no one in Transformers has as much focus on them as Shipwreck.
Right.
Like Shipwreck is a very well fleshed out character.
You meet his nephew.
Yes.
You learn his
you learn everything about Shipwreck you could imagine.
He gets a lover. Like
Mira. He tells stories.
Yep.
You get inside his head.
You're totally right.
And nothing like that really exists in Transformers. Transformers was much more jump to these guys, jump to these guys, jump to these guys, with the possible exception of Grimlock, maybe.
But Bumblebee. I mean, he doesn't have much of a backstory, but he gets a lot of.
He gets a lot of screen time. He doesn't. I don't really know much about him.
Yeah, that's true.
And then he vanishes after the movie.
Do you think that some of that is because of the nature of a robot that can be destroyed? So they didn't want, maybe they consciously or purposely didn't want to attach too much backstory to characters that could lose an arm, lose a limb. You know what I mean? Whereas you're never going to blow up a G.I. Joe. As we saw in the movie, you can destroy Transformers.
It could be. I mean, part of it, I think, is just that G.I. Joe are humans.
Yeah.
And, they're basically military-serving humans, and there's a lot more to identify with there as a writer, I think. Especially in the 80s, if you're just a guy in a writer's room trying to, like, get these toy shows done.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Shipwreck has a family. Shipwreck has a place he's from. Shipwreck has embarrassing things in his past. Like, all the Transformers are from another planet and have been buried in a volcano for 4 million years. Like, what do you do with that? Like, you don't have much to work with there except what happens to them now.
I want some fanfic called like Stories from the Volcano. And like 4 million years, just random stories of them waking up and doing like terrible things with each other.
Don't give them ideas. You're gonna make something happen there.
So today's episode is Only Human. When did you recognize that it was a G.I. Joe crossover?
Immediately, because it's Chris Latta doing Old Snake's voice, so it's obviously that's
him. And they give him the metal mask too.
Yeah, and at the end he does the half Cobra cough.
Yeah. It blew my mind when I saw this as a kid. Like,
because when I was a kid, I certainly didn't know that Marissa Fairborn was Flint and Lady J's daughter, because I didn't know any of the G.I. Joe guys' real names.
Yeah, not at all.
Unless you're memorizing the bio cards on the back of the packages.
Some of us might have, but still, I don't think I put it together.
No, I never put that. I mean, I guess you know it also if you were reading the Marvel comic, because they use their real names in that semi regularly. But like, at no point did I figure out like, oh, clearly, because like, she does kind of look like them. Like, it's like clearly she's got Lady J's hair color, and she's kind of got like but it's like it's Sunbow animation. Everybody kind of looks like everybody, So this was really the first. I'm like, oh, that was neat. Like, that raises a lot of questions. And of course, it wasn't like outlandish at the time, because there'd already been the Transformers versus G.I. Joe comic series,
right.
In which they destroy Bumblebee.
They did.
And
didn't he come back as Goldbug?
Yeah, they rebuilt him as Goldbug, which is again, it was funny to see, because that was again the drive to sell toys, so you have to use the new name, but like. Neither the comic nor the cartoon figured out a good way to rename him.
I bought that comic book, G.I. Joe Transformers, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was visiting my cousin. This is how my brain works. I remember exactly where I was. I remember what the comic shop looks like. I couldn't find it on a map, but I remember the interior of it. and that was the first time I didn't even know they had crossed over, and I found it in some back issues. It was my cousin Dave took me to the shop. I believe that was when he were driving his Jeep that had a hole in the floor, and I read the G.I. Joe Transformers crossover on my cousin's couch. It was like I never even knew this could be a thing. Like, it was the greatest. I loved it so much. I still have those actual issues. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, and it was really integrated too. Like there's in the regular Transformers series, which I'm actually rereading right now, the Marvel series. Shockwave makes a reference to informs Serpentor that this is happening, or so, the main comic actually acknowledged that this was happening at the same time, and as part as kind of the Marvel's desperate attempt to try to make us forget that Transformers was originally part of the actual Marvel universe, the 616.
Well, Spider-Man swinging on
Spider-Man and Shield, and there were a couple other references, like Marvel references early on. I think there's a Daily Bugle paper that shows up.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think you're right.
And later on, people wrote, and Circuit Breaker, who started as an Avengers villain.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because she was in Secret Wars because.
Yes.
Specifically, they had her appear in Secret Wars first, so Marvel owned her. So that because it was part of a licensed property, so they wanted her to become a Marvel character, original character. Do not steal on the woman with the printed circuitry that lets her fly. Circuit Breaker was a villain in the Marvel Transformers comics she was a worker on a 22-year-old genius engineer on an oil rig owned by the Tony Stark equivalent, GB Blackrock, and Shockwave attacked and electrocuted her with one of his shots on the oil rig, and she was paralyzed from the neck down, except for slight movement in her right arm. And using equipment that GB Blackrock bought for her in her hospital room, she designed a printed circuitry suit that wraps around her and acts as an external nervous system, so she can shoot electrical bolts and fly and kill robots,
as one does.
Yes, but Marvel really didn't want Hasbro to own that character for some reason, so they put her in Secret Wars, I think it was, so she'd be a Marvel character, not a Transformers.
It's funny, the '80s were full of crossover IP crossovers that just ruined reprints forever. ROM crossover with Marvel Universe a ton. Godzilla would show up in books.
In fact, Godzilla's referenced when Shield shows up in Transformers. Yeah. They say if that was it, Nick Fury says, "Dum if that big green fire snorting lizard is loose again, I quit." That's their one picture.
In X-Men, Kulan Gath, which was a Conan villain.
Oh yeah,
there's a great X-Men series, but they that's unreprintable.
Yep.
What if Conan? What if Wolverine lived in the Hyperborean age? And what if Conan lived in the modern age?
Yeah, I remember that cover. The cover, the Conan one, it's Conan pointing a 6-shooter at the reader.
Yeah.
It's just him. It's Conan, but he's aiming a revolver at you. It's amazing.
It's crazy, and so all those it's great. And I wonder what if it was lawyers weren't paying attention, or they just didn't think these things through. Because I get it, if you want to do a crossover, you do it in a separate, an isolated. Here's the miniseries Joe Transformers, although there wasn't. They were actually all under the same umbrella. Yeah. But you do a separate, isolated miniseries, cross them over, and then you move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, having them show up in the regular issues of the standard comic.
Yeah. Well, great. I guess reprints weren't really as big a thing then.
No, they weren't at all.
And it just wasn't. Trade paperbacks weren't how you read comics back then.
Right.
And that evolved in the '90s essentially, and or more so.
I have currently on eBay. I'm selling the very first Marvel trade, which was the collection of the Death of the Phoenix.
Oh, I have that.
It was Well, first Marvel trade, if you ignore the Fireside books.
Right.
But that book, that was the first time they collected it, and it's funny because it's wide. Mm-hmm. It's a weird shape.
They did those. The graphic novel size was what they call. Yeah, they had the Marvel graphic novels did that. The God Loves Man Kills was like that. I want to say the thing that kicked off the trade paperback revolution was the Death of Superman collection.
Probably.
Because I remember that was the first thing. I mean, Dark Knight Returns obviously had it, and Watchmen.
Yeah. But you remember they used to refer to that prestige format as Dark Knight format.
Yes.
For years.
Yes.
That's what it was called. It was this book. There's a new Captain America origin story coming out with Kevin McGuire art. It's in Dark Knight format. And it was always like, what?
But I remember because that was right when I started working at the comic shop, and Death of Superman came out, and weeks later they put the trade paperback collection of the whole story out. And it was just like it was cheap newsprint. Like the paper wasn't even as good as the main comics, the original floppies, and we could not keep it in stock. Yeah. Like businessmen kept coming by and buying these things, and like we're like, what is like people we'd never seen before and would never see again, but they had to read Death of Superman.
We get that in the shop we get a copy of that once every few months. Someone brings it in, and we always put it on the shelf. Even though it's a 25-year-old trade, and it's obviously available in much better printing, much better condition, and those singular copies like that always sells out. It always sells.
Because it's just there's something about that one. Because I have a better printing of it too. But if I bust it out to read it, I read the old one because it feels better. It's I don't know.
I think it's still on some form of newsprint.
Yeah,
like a higher.
Yeah, it feels like someone just bound the comics up, and it's not you didn't make it glossy paper, you didn't reprint it or anything. It just feels like someone took the pages and stuck them in a binding.
Oh, nostalgia.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if you feel like you want to reminisce old times, there's no better way to do that than by following me on Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook. That's
his pictures are from the 1980s.
Yeah, that is a ham-fisted segue. but you can do all that at Joe on Joe Pod. Go online, and remember, this month, January 2018, we are running a review contest. So if you're hearing this and it's still January, go to Apple Podcasts, leave me a review. If you're easily identifiable from your Apple name, then I can get in touch with you from there. Otherwise, send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com and let me know that you put a review in. I'm going to go through all the new reviews for January. We're going to pick 5 winners, and the winners will get an assortment of G.I. Joe comic books directly from my own personal collection, mailed to you. So we're trying to get those reviews up. That's how you get attention on iTunes. See how you get more readers and help grow the show. Matt, we can find you on Twitter at Matt Keil, right?
MKEIL.
Awesome. Yeah. And Sifted.net, tell us a little bit about it.
Sifted.net is an aggregate site for video game news. It's basically you sign up and you can set it to sift through every English-speaking video game news story in the world, goes through this thing's back end and comes out with, through your preferences, what you want to read. It means basically you never have to go visit any other site. You basically it'll all get delivered to you. It curates every major video game news and reporting site around. Very, very nice. It's free to do that. And then if you subscribe, you get access to our exclusive content, which includes the flagship podcast, video podcast that we do every week called Game Face, where we spend about 3 hours. I know it's amazing, I'm sure, to everyone hearing that I like to talk a lot.
I love it, though.
But it's about 3 hours on the week's video game news and games and whatever came out that week and stuff. And my friend Shane Satterfield, who owns the site, he and I just go back and forth on stuff. And sometimes we fight viciously, and sometimes we just sit there and rip on the Xbox or whatever we want. Whatever we're gonna do.
Fantastic.
It's a good time. Sifted.net. Sifted with no E.
So make sure you go to Sifted.net. Now, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to track down your Transformers DVDs. I know all you Joe fans have Transformers on DVD.
Of course.
And this was from season 3. We're watching the Rhino collection.
Yeah. Should be about the same on the Shout Factory collection.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some animation differences, but I'm pretty sure the runtime is the same.
Okay. And season 3, it's the first disc of the final box set. It's called Only Human. Mm-hmm. You probably find it on YouTube as well. And
this one is a pretty well-known one in the Transformers fan base because I believe this is the one where they make a bunch of the Transformers humans.
Oh, yeah. It's great.
Everybody's got overalls on and stuff.
We're going to get to
future
that.
overalls.
Future matching overalls designed to look exactly like their robotic counterparts. We're going to get there. So thanks again for listening, everybody. And here we go with Only Human. And here we go. So this is like the new post-movie opening.
Yeah.
Everything's super techno.
This is the opening to remind you that nothing is as you loved it. It's all characters you don't care about.
Everything
now.
has gone to hell. Yeah. I've always loved, though, like the newish designs, like this generation of Transformers. Like they were always different to me.
Yeah, I was never a giant fan of because like they went a little Flash Gordon with the movie designs, right? Everybody's got the high collars and they've kind of got like this sort of that kind of thing going on. My issue with them is they don't turn into real vehicles anymore, so like they basically cheat.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
they're just like future smooth cars.
It's way more interesting if like you have to kind of fit this robot into a Lamborghini, as opposed to like it's a space car,
it's just
whatever
potato,
and that's actually becoming an issue now with like where people are making like the masterpieces of them, where like like Springer is a big problem. You'll see Springer in this episode, the green and yellow triple changer. His helicopter and car modes are just like future-y weirdo things, and every episode basically draws them different. Here he is. There's Springer right there.
Yep.
So
wait.
Caught him through the rotor blade.
He just did exactly what bothers me in almost every episode of G.I. Joe. They
he's got arms
ignore
now.
the fact that there are rotors on
Right.
helicopters.
And then he crashes. Oh, boy. So his helicopter and car modes basically look different every time they're drawn.
Really?
So the question with making the Masterpiece toys of them becomes...
And then
which one do you do?
How are you getting that close to the building? He's kicked off a little to the side, but yeah, you're right. Do you make all of them?
So all the different third parties that make that have made different choices about the alternate modes.
Yeah, and
people just basically buy the one they think looks the best.
So we started this episode with. Do you know what city this is in?
No.
Did they ever name it or
if they did an establishing shot, I missed it.
Yeah. So it's 2005 or 2006. There's some terrorists that are attacking, and the terrorists actually look like future dreadnoughts.
Danger.
Yeah, and there's a
Anyway, it's not a new tire.
Rodimus Prime is scratching his face with something called neutronium, which is
Ultra Magnus constantly shocked by Rodimus's behavior.
now in the movie. Ultra Magnus was first given the Matrix, but then he almost got killed, right?
Yes.
But he didn't die, right?
He did not die.
survived.
The Junkions put him back together.
And he realized he wasn't suited for leadership.
Yeah. Well, the thing was that between then and the end of the Unicron battle, Hot Rod touched the Matrix, and the Matrix chose it.
Right.
Clearly, he was the chosen one. There's a debate actually in the fandom whether that's because he was always destined to be the leader, or because when Optimus tries to hand off the Matrix, he drops it and Hot Rod catches it and gives it to Ultra Magnus. And is it because he's the first one to touch it after Optimus and it imprinted on him? And so basically, because Hot Rod got Optimus killed by jumping into the fight with Megatron, did Hot Rod also get Ultra Magnus almost killed by touching the Matrix first?
I like to think that he did.
I like to think that
keeps
too.
him up at
Yeah.
night. Now, in the movie, Hot Rod was voiced by Judd Nelson.
Yes.
He's not voiced by Judd Nelson on the show, correct?
No,
Yeah.
he is Dick Gautier.
On that's Serpentor.
Yeah, on this. So this is Serpentor as the good guy leader.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Now, does he still have the Matrix at this point?
He does.
He does.
Okay,
so
if he's Rodimus Prime, he has the Matrix.
anytime he's Rodimus
if he
Prime,
takes
he's got
the
the
Matrix
Matrix.
out, he shrinks back down to Hot Rod.
Got it.
You look
It's funny, though, because Optimus doesn't shrink to anything.
No, Optimus is just always Optimus.
He's always Optimus,
because as it should be.
And here, I agree. And here we get our first mention of Old Snake. So these terrorists, they're looking for what they said is old technology.
Yeah.
And here we get our first glimpse at Old Snake.
Something worthy of my services, Mr. Draft.
And there's the talented Chris Latta. And we've got it's Cobra Commander.
Yeah,
And
clearly.
his smooth, shiny face mask is it's designed a little different. He doesn't have the blue over helmet. And
Probably
he's-
lost that. At some
Yeah,
point.
and he's dressed like Carmen Sandiego.
Now, apparently he got better from the snake thing.
Well, he got better in the third season of G.I. Joe.
Oh, did he?
He wears the armor.
Okay.
Which I've always looked at as that's like a gestation armor. Like he went from being a snake, he was still on some physical issues,
Yeah.
so he had to build.
Well,
this.
he's got some bulk in this episode, so clearly maybe he's got something under that.
He's been
coat.
eating well.
Yeah.
And the terrorists are recruiting Old Snake because, without saying it, but Cobra has old technology that they want to use. And I can't recall if we.
It's like that John Titor thing where he had to come back in time to get the old IBM. To
Who's John Titor?
That's an internet legend where a guy posted on forum saying he was from the future,
Yes.
and he needed to get like an old computer because they needed to update something in the post-apocalyptic future he was from.
Did you see his hand? Cobra Commander's hand?
only one thing.
It looked wait.
Victor.
Oh, it's green.
It looks green, which does that mean it's still
He's still
snaky?
snaky. Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's a lot of thought
That's a
happening.
lot going on there. So there's Springer. So tell me about. I know your lady Elisa is Springer's her favorite.
Yes.
guy. So what's so appealing about Springer?
He's kind of the Han Solo cocksure rogue of the group. And in the movie, he gets the best lines. He's got the sarcastic lines. I got better things to do tonight than die.
It's a great line.
He's kind of the warrior of the group, as opposed to, like, maybe Ultra Magnus is stronger, but Ultra Magnus would never do anything as cool as Springer.
Ultra Magnus always struck me as just being a nerd. Like, he was never cool enough.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was like almost Optimus, but he wasn't Optimus. And, like, he just never fit in.
Right. He's got a confidence
Am I reading
problem.
that correctly?
No, I think you're right. He's too rule-bound, and he's got a confidence issue.
Yeah.
Man, everybody wears a lot of capes.
Lots of capes and high collars in this future. And the Transformers, so we've got Rodimus, Ultra Magnus, RC, and Springer.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been captured now by this these terrorists. And we're going to be using Synthoid technology.
Oh, yeah?
Synthoid technology, which was used multiple times in the G.I. Joe cartoon. The Synthoid conspiracy being the first one, where they replaced all the leaders of G.I. Joe with Synthoids. And they also, actually, Synthoid technology was what Serpentor was made out of. And then they came back at least one more time towards the end of the run, and it's basically human duplicates.
Huh. I really appreciate that Cobra Commander knows how to run that machine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not a thing he left to the underlings. He's like, show me how it works, clearly, at some point.
Hey, Cobra Commander's the guy who takes the bomb, flies the bomb
Right.
to the Statue of Liberty. He's like, I'll do this myself.
He's in the mix.
Yeah, and he's a survivor. Look, I don't see anyone else from Cobra hanging out.
Yeah.
Cobra Commander survived.
Dr. Mindbender's not around to do this anymore.
This material is destroyed. Is that clear?
The robots' consciousness have seemingly been sucked out of their bodies, and the Transformers are being sent to a junkyard. But this is the only part of this episode that's very muddy to me. I don't understand. So they're human bodies, but why were the human bodies sent to the junkyard? Why were they transferred into human bodies in the first place? We go to commercial break, and we'll be right back. Today's Filecard feature is on the Autobot, codenamed Springer. His function is aerial defense, and he's a triple changer. His quote is, "Strength is more than physical." He's a wisecracking, sharp-witted adventurer. This powerful Autobot fighter has a massive physique and an easygoing manner. He possesses incredible springing power in his legs, travels long distances with pogo-like motion, and in robot mode, he carries a laser that produces giant wind tunnels. His helicopter blade transforms into a lightsaber that can cut through concrete. He's optimistic and good-humored. They say Springer is the archetypical action hero. He's great in a fight, and he's unselfconsciously brave, confident, and always ready with a deadpan, sarcastic quip to lighten the moment. Someone that you can depend on to ride in, save the day, and be smug about it. Though his easy self-confidence is one of his most notable features, actually being responsible for others weighs heavily upon his otherwise jocular personality. Springer gets his name by combining the thrusting power of his legs with his retro thrusters to move rapidly through the battlefield. Like we talked about this episode, Springer is a favorite amongst some of my friends, and I've seen him before, obviously, but I never really paid a lot of attention to him. And after this episode, consider me a fan. As discussed at some point in this episode, Springer has been drawn very differently on the show and in all the comics appearances. Every time he would transform into either his helicopter or his car mode, they would have a lot of different looks to it. So I'm looking at all his various different incarnations of his toy, and the unifying trait is his color scheme, which is green, yellow, and black, and some gray, of course. And it looks great. Like, I really like it. It is very distinctive. You see that and you go, oh, that's got to be Springer. But beyond that, though, it really does kind of break down. Like, a lot of times he's got a yellow chest plate. Sometimes it's a little darker green. He's got rotors in different places every time he transforms. So I totally get what they're saying, what Matt was saying on this episode, where he really does look wildly different. But having said that, though, he does look good. I think he's a good-looking car. He transforms into a truck and also into a helicopter. And when he's a robot, he's got this giant sword, which they refer to as a lightsaber on his card. I hope no one got sued for that. And yeah, he's a good-looking robot. He's a good-looking transformer. So Springer, you Autobot leader of the Wreckers, we salute you. And back from commercial, this is one of the things I'm most jealous of with Transformers, where you guys got different animations for the commercial breaks every time. I love that. But why were the human bodies sent to a junkyard to be, quote, disposed of?
I don't know. Like, why didn't they just shoot them in the head?
Why didn't they just shoot them in the head?
I don't know.
Why did they have to transfer their minds out of there in the first place? And why a junkyard? With the junkyard, I assume they were taking the robotic bodies to get trashed.
Oh, here's their convenient
and
clothing.
Here's
That's the same
the
color
convenient
as all their...
clothing. Same color scheme, same design.
Yep.
So you guys have been to Transformers Con a lot.
Oh yeah.
Have people
Yes.
cosplayed as this?
Yes.
They
People,
have.
people do dress as these.
Thank God.
And in fact, there are figures you can buy of them too.
Really?
Like there's a third-party set they put out. of
Like,
these days.
and they're like 3 3/4 like J. Joe says.
There's those, and there's like smaller ones that go with the masterpiece scale.
Oh, so they'd be on scale
Yeah.
with the robot.
What's happened
Oh, that's
to
great.
us?
We were just wondering about that ourselves.
They've also got a little Robotech look to them.
Yes.
You know, with just the flare on the shoulder pads and everything.
Underestimated.
But why?
Yeah, her hair does absolutely look like her robotic head.
Well, and I like that Ultra Magnus even has like the Reed Richards gray temples because he's the older one. And
Yeah.
I recommend
even though like how do you they're all millions of years old. They don't
Right.
I want to find out how.
Right now they're in like a game of Metal Gear Solid.
right. Well, which is fitting because Old Snake is the name of Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 4 when he is prematurely aged.
It's a good
Look at that one.
reference. I like that a lot.
Pop culture just eats itself
It
at
really
some
does.
point.
It really does. These bad guys, they also look like they look like the bad guys from the show Cops a little bit.
Oh yeah, a
Remember
little
that?
bit.
You know, just in general aesthetic, which
Committing
which
crime in a
fighting
future
crime
time.
In a future time.
Yeah.
Search the estate just in case. What about the robots?
Yeah, this is
Did
like
you do anything with
I'm
them?
pretty sure when I was a kid I thought these guys were like the older Dreadnoks.
They seem to be.
Even though it's kind of implausible that the Dreadnoks would survive this
Oh.
long.
There,
No,
the
they
steps
wouldn't.
must lead to Draft's
Absolutely
house. Maybe we should pay a call.
I guess it's because they got all their outfits in the same like junkyard, but like that's an interesting uniform they've got the junk people wearing with the X cross back
the
overalls and
The unspoken backstory is like the junk people in the future live in a caste system, and based on the color of their uniform, that's the kind of junk they sift through.
Meanwhile, I
Meanwhile.
don't think there are any Decepticons in this episode.
No, I don't think there are either.
You don't need them.
No, and Cobra Commander's
Lacking grace, they make up in
controlling the robot bodies.
So that's what they wanted.
Right. That is well no, but that's the bad guys didn't. It was Cobra Commander's idea to save them. So they just were going to transfer the bodies into the other ones just to kill
do it?
them. Which why didn't then they just kill them? That's the part that I don't understand. But now
Well, you were running straight for the cliff anyway. I don't know why you're so surprised you fell down it.
I like this, like everyone getting used to having human bodies. You know that like it can get hurt. Although he's actually stumbling much like he is on the DVD menu.
What the hell is going on here?
We don't
Yeah.
often get prowlers around here.
This
You
is
were,
great.
you just had that on in the house?
So this woman, I don't know what her name is, but she just invites the human Hot Rod into a place to like protect him.
She's got a thing for workers. That's
Yeah, and you know what? Based on what happens later, she does have a thing with this worker.
I also enjoy that her couch is just like if everyone sits around on the couch and looks at the front door. I guess that's what happens in that. That's what happens in that entertainment room.
She and Hot Rod are gonna get busy, and I have no doubt that they got busy on this episode.
That's the voice you decided to have come out of that guy, huh?
That guy looks like Ming the Merciless.
Well, everybody's got the collars for it. So
Yeah,
I already need a shave.
it's a Springer.
Springer lamenting that he grows hair.
Yeah, and he sees his friends' bodies. Now, did you notice Magnus's his front changed to white? Is that just a coloring error, or is that
That's a color.
normally-
I mean,
is he normal? It's not normally white, right?
no. What happens is, well, in the toy works where like you've got a little white Optimus Prime inside the trailer armor, and so you take the Optimus Prime out, turn him into the cab, and then stick the trailer on him. But that's never used in the cartoon, so they always basically they have to find a way to make him turn into a white truck cab, and they just sort of fudge it.
Oh,
every
really?
time. Yeah.
So wait a minute. Is the toy Optimus Prime? Does he turn into Ultra Magnus, or is he a different dude?
He's a different guy.
Oh, he just has the same body.
It's just the
build.
same toy.
Got it.
So
Okay.
so the Ultra Magnus toy is the Optimus Prime cab with a different trailer.
Got it.
And you
Okay.
basically turn the trailer into the big red and blue robot, and then you stick the white Optimus Prime figure from the cab into it.
Okay.
And then you stick Ultra Magnus's head on top of the white Prime head, and there you go.
Got it.
So that's never been addressed in the fiction except in the Dreamwave Generation 1 comic, where at one point Ultra Magnus gets really messed up, and then he sheds the armor and busts in and saves the day as the White Prime.
Oh.
There was also, because of that toy mold connection in the Japan, there are a couple places where they imply that Ultra Magnus and Optimus Prime are brothers.
Yeah, I thought they were. Were they not?
Not in America.
Oh,
although
that
is
was
a thing that the fandom kind of came to independently at times too.
Okay.
That is a widely used idea.
Which I always thought made sense, that why he felt a little, why Ultra Magnus never really succeeded. He felt a little inferior because his whole life his
I just
brother
want to point out,
is
that's the second
the
time.
man.
This is the second time these guys have tripped a motion detector alarm. Like, they're not good at the human thing.
Yeah, no, they're really not. Real quick, the lettering on that was not perishable goods. It was perishable goods.
There must be enough explosives.
These are goods that are able to perish a lot of people. And they find a whole bunch of explosives. Meanwhile, Ultra Magnus' body...
Ultra Magnus and RC are
and
about to be
RC
killed by their own bodies.
By their own bodies. Now they know how humans feel. Deal with that. And we go to commercial break. And that's
Blur.
That's Blur?
Yep.
Awesome.
After these messages.
Hey, listeners, here's a friendly reminder for our January 2018 review contest. Go on over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. As many stars as you want. Say as whatever you want. I want you to be honest, but leave a review there. I'm going to pick 5 of the reviews that are left in the month of January, and you're going to get free G.I. Joe comic books from me, from my personal collection, mailed directly to you, free of charge, just for leaving me a review. If we only get 5, we're going to give out 5. If we get more than 5, we'll pick 5 random ones. If we get 6, maybe we'll give 6. You never know. So please head on over to Apple Podcasts. The contest ends January 31st. Thanks for listening. And this is a Sharkticon. So we're back from commercial with a Sharkticon welcoming us back. When we went out to commercial, it was Blur, and Blur was the guy that talked real fast, right?
That was John Machida.
Micro Machine.
Yeah, Micro Machines, man.
Yeah.
John Machida.
Yeah.
He was probably my favorite season 3 character when I was a kid because he talked fast.
Didn't he just pass away like 2 years ago or something?
I think he's still alive.
Is he?
I want to say
I thought I heard that he. All right.
If he's dead, I didn't.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe
about
I heard Zach the Lego Maniac died.
Well, he did live on the edge for a long time. Zach did. Most of these guys are a lot. Dick Gautier died.
Yes, he definitely. Yeah,
but
Chris Latta died years ago.
Chris Latta was in the early '90s.
Yeah.
Supposedly from some kind of drug-related thing.
Oh wow.
He had a lot of issues. Hard life. That guy had. But the other, Susan Blue is RC. She's around. Neil Ross is still going strong.
Here's the thing.
Springer.
Hold on a second.
We've met before, haven't
She
we?
just said, he said, what's this? It's called breakfast dummy. You know who serves breakfast to you in the morning? Lovers. That's who. I think she seduced him overnight.
That sounds like something Rodimus would do.
Yeah, because he's been there overnight now.
Yeah.
And she's serving him breakfast. How do you like your eggs? Fertilized, okay?
Oh. Well, then you got to wonder what that kid's going to be.
Right?
I have to
Like,
see Kurt
that
at
is
once.
that where we get headmasters?
Might be.
I'm the Autobot, RC.
So RC is going to now. So the Autobots live in a compound that have humans running security on it.
Apparently.
Is that kind of a thing.
You can tell it's Autobot because it's that Autobot orange.
Yeah.
It's that arc color.
Right.
Here's Cup.
And Cup's the old man, right?
Yeah.
I never liked Cup's car because it's like a future pickup truck.
Yep. That's why he's named that.
We'll be stopping by a
Cup.
little later.
Pick Cup.
Oh, jeez, I never.
That's
I
why
never
he's-
put
that's
that
why he's
together.
named
That's
Cup.
Great. But like he never had, there was no gate on the back of his tail,
Right.
right? It was wide open.
Yeah.
So anything you would put in the pickup truck would just fall out.
Well, the idea, I think the fan explanation is that because it's future pickup truck, the bed is magnetized.
Oh, and everything.
So
is
you
metal.
just hold everything
Got
down.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Problem with eliminating
Well, in the future, everything is transported in metal crates. I believe
Right.
that is a sci-fi trope.
Well, also, I mean, that's a Cybertronian mode. So
That's true. Oh, that's true.
presumably they would
everything
never
be
have
on
something
metal.
non-metal.
Right. Now, why did they ever give an explanation of when they relocated to Earth? Why they didn't take on more earthly looking vehicles?
No, but presumably, I guess that would be because, like, either the Transformers were not a secret, so there's no reason to be in disguise anymore, or Transformers and Earth Tech had merged so much that they're functionally no difference.
Yeah.
He's
Interesting.
Jake. You should see him handle these.
I think the guy on the right is like Monkey Wrench's kid. Monkey Wrench had an illegitimate kid with like Zorana.
Springer's got a weird cat-like look to him.
They
as a
do.
human.
Yeah, they really. I wonder if that's intentional.
I don't know.
To maybe give him a Synthoid's a little bit different look.
Yeah, it doesn't quite look
human
human.
Figures, yeah. Oh,
How
great.
hard do you have to punch someone to knock them out of the seat?
Springer is stealing himself right
Yes.
now, right?
Springer just self-jacked his own helicopter.
And then the hot rod, the Cobra controlled hot rod, just shot Springer and the human Springer and Magnus down.
Miniaturization not a thing in the future apparently because everyone's phones are gigantic.
No, they're massive.
Oh, they're going to destroy Metroplex.
Oh.
That's the idea.
Metroplex was great. So Metroplex is the city.
Here. Yes.
For those of you not familiar with it, he's like the city that transformed. It was like a massive play set for the toys. I've read a few comics with him. Like they've used him in a few. It's always fun because he like wakes up and he's like a slumbering giant, like Metroplex. What's his origin? Like, do you know? Like, did they ever give like a?
It depends on like for the cartoon here. The origin is that they basically turned Autobot City into a transformer.
Yeah.
Like so they have a base on Earth. You see it in the movie called Autobot City, and part of that complex transforms into Metroplex.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like the current IDW comics, the Metroplex is one of a number of giant ancient transformers called Titans, who vanished from Cybertron millions of years ago and like kind of scattered across the galaxy. And because they basically, I think what it is like they basically fled Cybertron. Like anyone who didn't want to fight in the war kind of left on these Titans.
Okay.
And wherever those Titans ended up, like the planets they were on sort of became these sort of new conclaves of Transformers life. So like
Got it.
there's like a beast planet and a speed planet kind of, and this is sort of taken from the Unicron trilogy stuff, but like basically like that's a way they kind of use that as a way to introduce new characters that weren't Autobots and Decepticons. So like there's a whole planet of female Transformers now in IDW, where originally Simon Furman's stuff was there were no female Transformers except RC, who was forcibly made female, which was a whole other kind of problem. But then eventually it's like, oh no, one of the Titans was female, and the planet she landed on became all women, and there's nothing weird about that, and we're just going to go with that.
Yeah.
And that's much better. So
Well, on the show,
it's like the Titans are basically these, at the beginning of IDW they're like mythical. In the cartoon here, it's literally just we build a big robot.
We built a big robot transformer.
And Trypticon's the same way.
Yeah. So on the show, the humans they worked with the rest of, like, we got Blaster and not Periscope. What's the Perceptor.
Two of the few survivors from the pre-movie days.
And they worked with them to transfer their consciousness back into the robot phones. The one thing that I would have liked to have seen in that is that somehow they would have used some extra knowledge of themselves because they're themselves. So real quick, let's get this epilogue here. This is so great.
They simply don't make terrorists like they used to.
It's so good. It's so good. So that's Metroplex, right?
That's Trypticon.
Or that's Trypticon, sorry.
The Decepticon City.
The Decepticon City, yeah. Oh, that's so great. That final bit with Cobra Commander is wonderful. I would have loved to have seen them use like inside knowledge, like one of the Transformers saying like, "Oh, I got a bad knee," and so let's, you know what I mean. So let's use that to trip me up or something like some deep working of their own selves.
Yeah, well,
as
like
the way to beat themselves.
Well, you could have maybe like the main thing you could have been, it's like Rodimus could have just been like, "There's a giant glowing magical object in my chest that only it responds to me." How about that?
Also, that yeah. That's exactly right. That's the one thing missing from this episode that I would have loved to have seen. Instead, they just beat them traditionally, like.
Yeah, I mean, I still appreciate the kind of the deep cuts on the G.I. Joe lore, like the Synthoid stuff and all that. Like, that's impressive to me, just because, like, they didn't have to do that.
No,
and we've seen them in this show and G.I. Joe. Just like, oh, we need tech that does this. It's the tech that does this.
Yeah,
done. Like, there's no continuity at all. But like this, somebody cared. on this episode.
I agree 100%. I love it. I think this is so good. And I think it absolutely belongs in like the same conversations of both shows, but like absolutely belongs in the G.I. Joe conversation.
Yeah, like if you aren't going to do the G.I. Joe crossover with My Little Pony, which is the other Hasbro property that was popular at the time, this is your second option.
I want My Little Pony to team up with Polly and Timber and Junkyard and Law. Yeah.
Oh, just like a Hasbro Pets
League.
League.
Yeah, just a Hasbro Super Pets. Yeah, Hasbro Pets team. That's what I want. They get shunt. They use the same device that sent them to the other world in Worlds Without End, and they get shunted into the My Little Pony world. So on that world, they all can talk, besides just Polly.
Yeah.
So now all the animals are sentient, and they hang out with the horses, and they have an event. I'm not a brony, so I'm not up on current My Little Pony continuity.
Oh, this would have to be classic.
Yeah, this would be classic though. But that's how you get the G.I. Joe animals. And Cobra had animals too, like Crocmaster.
Yep.
He had a crocodile and stuff.
And Raptor had the Falcon.
So they all get trapped in there, and then you have a big animal brouhaha over in My Little Pony.
Did somebody have a snake? Someone had to have a snake.
Well, Serpentor had the 2 snakes. So
all right,
maybe
so those snakes can talk.
Goes through, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, snakes are, and they just tell all Serpentor's secrets. They're just catty. They're like, you don't even want to know what he does. It's terrible.
Oh, we got to sit on the shoulder and watch it all. It's just like,
And when he makes us stiff and throws us, it's just awkward.
Sometimes he leaves us there for hours. We have to find the new base and slither back. Like
we still have memorials for our friend Ted, who got thrust into Duke. We never got Ted back.
Yeah, no, we don't even know what happened to him.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to him, but he did his duty.
Well, he didn't kill Duke.
No,
so.
well, he tried. He did his best.
Yeah,
he did his best. So, Matt, this was fantastic.
Oh,
thank you so much for doing this.
It's always a lot of fun. I like being on these.
Yeah, this was so much fun. And listeners, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Any final parting Transformers G.I. Joe thoughts?
Not really. I think we've seen the top of the mountain here.
Yeah.
Everything else is downhill no matter what Hasbro decides to do going forward today. I don't know if you're going to top this.
I agree. This was pretty dynamic. So thank you, Matt, so much.
No, thank you.
So thanks so much for listening. And now you, Joe. So let's transform and roll out.